What's up YouTube, it's Reed with RCG Car Reviews here, and today we are taking a look at the 2015 BMW X1 sDrive 28i. Let's check it out and see how the Germans do a lot with a little. So about the exterior of the X1, I think the exterior of this car is one of its strong suits. It's a very nice and aggressive styled SUV, but it's very cute as well, if you will. Of course, looks are subjective, so I'll let you make up your own mind on that. But as far as my opinion goes, I think it's a great looking little SUV. You've got your halogen headlamps up at the front with your twin kidney style grille up there. Moving down the front bumper a little bit, you have kind of a satin finished area up there, which kind of looks like a diffuser and just adds a little sporty touch to the front end of this car. Coming to the rims on this car, you have 18-inch rims wrapped in 225/45 Pirelli all-season tires. They are run flats. That's just kind of a BMW thing. They all have run flats. Moving on to the door mirrors on this car, you can see that you have your LED turn signals in the mirror, as well as body-colored mirror caps. And now coming around to the back, which is probably my favorite view of this car, it is really nicely styled. You've got very nice looking tail lamps back there, and you've got your BMW badge as well there in the center, and your X1 polished badge there on the right side of the tailgate. Moving down some, you have again a rear diffuser style bumper. Of course, it's not functional being a little BMW SUV, but it does add a nice little sporty edge to it. And then you have your satin silver exhaust tips there on the back. Moving inside the X1, this is a very, very nice little interior. Of course, being an entry-level BMW, there are going to be some harder plastics here and there, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, but being the entry-level car, I think it's just fine. Now, the first thing that you'll probably notice when you sit down in the X1 is how comfortable the vinyl-coated seats are. Of course, they're not the real leather, it's the kind of the vinyl type material, but as far as durability and longevity goes, this is probably the seating surface that I would pick. They're very easy to keep clean and very easy to take care of as well. Moving around to this nice little steering wheel, it is a heated steering wheel, full leather wrapped. You've got your multifunction controls on either side of the steering wheel and some really nice side bolstering grip extensions just to add that little extra sporty feel to the car. Coming on to the gauges of the X1, they're straight out of the E90 Generation 3 series. Just picked them right out of the E90 parts bin and put them in here, and they work just fine. Very simple and easy to read, and at night they do light up a nice red color, which isn't the most appealing color as far as aesthetics go, but functionality, you really can't beat the red. It's very easy on the eyes and just super easy to live with as well. You've got your cruise control down here on the bottom left side of the steering wheel on a little stalk down there. You've got a panoramic sunroof in here, dual sun visors as well. Just overall a really nice place to spend time. Now going on to the back seat of the BMW X1, this is another area where this car shines. For being such a small little SUV, it really is a very nicely sized back seat. They are 40-20-40 split, so if you need to carry some longer items such as skis or some 2x4s or whatever, you can do that with ease. The seats do recline as well, and there is a nice amount of legroom back there. I'm able to fit behind my 6-foot frame very easily, and of course there are dual mat pockets on the back of both seats. So overall, is the exterior and the interior of the car perfect? Absolutely not. There's always gonna be little faults, but those faults are subjective, and looking at the whole picture, this is a very well done SUV. Alrighty guys, so here's the key to the X1. Let's go ahead and start it up and take it for a little drive. Now the very first thing that you'll notice whenever you start moving in the X1 is how tight the steering is. Very nice and tight electric powered steering. And we'll talk about the ride a little bit. You can see we're kind of on a bumpier park area up here, and it really does soak up the bumps quite well. Pardon that bell ringing up there. But as far as ride comfort goes and suspension articulation, it does a very nice job. This one has 4-wheel independent suspension. You can see we're going down a very steep grade here, and the brakes feel perfectly suited for this job. It doesn't feel like it's out of its comfort zone at all. This is an area where I definitely could not bring my my Mustang because it has a lowered suspension, and this car doesn't sit extraordinarily high, but for some little park area roads like this, the ride height is perfectly suited. So should you ever want to go do a little bit of exploring through the mountains or something like that, this car would do just fine. So getting started on this little country back road here, it is a pretty undulated surface, and again, ride comfort is great. And this is a rough surface as well, so you can hear a tiny bit of road noise, but that's mostly due to the BMW coming with run flat tires. If you were to get you a set of just standard all-season tires on here, this interior would be whisper quiet. A very well insulated interior, which I'm really thankful for. And then of course, being on this smoother surface, I'm just sitting here whispering and you can hear me just fine. So very quiet interior. Coming to this little intersection here, let's pop it over into manual shift mode and sport, and we'll see how the power is. Of course, there is a little bit of turbo lag with this engine, but once that boost kicks in, man, this thing moves. It's just got the little twin power turbo 2-liter 4-cylinder, which makes about 240 horsepower and 260-ish pound-feet of torque. I think they rated it 261. And I think it might make a little bit more than that. I've driven this engine in the newer generation of the 3 Series, and it does a great job moving that little car out. And this one is, of course, a little bit heavier, so it does a great job moving this car out of its own way. Of course, I love to drive one of the 3-liter twin-power turbo 6-cylinder cars, but as far as the daily driver goes, and fuel economy especially, this thing's great. The motor makes a pretty nice noise. It doesn't have the sound induction that the 3 Series does, but the 3 Series is much more sports-oriented than this car is, and so I can forgive it for that. The motor makes a pretty decent little noise. The exhaust has a nice little growl, as you heard earlier, so no complaints as far as the engine goes. And while we're on the topic of the engine, we'll talk about fuel economy as well. This thing sips gas. My family, we were a little bit heavier footed, and this thing's been returning a steady 24.5 miles to the gallon. So it does a great job sipping fuel. I think EPA rates it at 21-28. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this thing really does a nice job on the fuel economy. Let's see about that acceleration one more time. Pop it over into sport, put it in manual shiftability there. Let's see what it'll do. Revs almost all the way to 7 grand, and that was a run to about 60 miles an hour or so, and this thing pulls. I'm really impressed. Of course, this one being the rear-wheel drive model, that kind of frees up some of the drivetrain loss, but this thing pulls really well. I'm very impressed. Once that turbo kicks in, you can hear it chirp the rear tire a little bit, which I wasn't expecting. But it doesn't feel like it's trying to get squirrely or anything like that at all. Being a rear-wheel drive model, you might think that it would try to kind of skid around a little bit, but it really doesn't. Very well-dialed suspension, and just a very well-mannered chassis altogether. Now, approaching this curve here, we'll go ahead and kind of toss it around this a little bit. And man, this thing handles well. Like I said, that 4-wheel independent suspension really does this car some favors. It doesn't feel like it's trying to understeer on me. It doesn't feel like the front end's trying to push out either. So very good suspension tuning. I'm pretty sure I may have just run over a snake. Welcome to East Texas, folks. But blasting through these curves, well, not blasting through, but just kind of enjoying myself through these curves, this thing is a blast. Such a fun little car. This car has such a happy spirit to it. It puts a smile on your face when you drive it. And as far as I'm concerned, that's priceless. You can't put a number on how happy a car makes you to drive. And these on the used car market now are getting to be a really good bargain. So if you're looking for something that's very efficient, very roomy, especially for the size, but not something that's as large as like an X3 or Q5 or something like that, give the X1 a look. I mean, this thing's great. Extremely comfortable interior. Again, I'm on a rougher country road surface here, so the off-season run flats are going to be a little noisy. But as far as wind noise goes, this thing is silent on the wind noise. There's a tiny, tiny little bit coming from the wing mirrors, but that's really all. Another thing that I really enjoy about driving this car are the brakes. I don't know what BMW does for their brakes, but man, they know how to do it right. Just very right now, as soon as you get on the pedal, this thing stops. And I really, really, really appreciate that. That inspires so much confidence as a driver, which, as many of you know, my daily driver is an 07 Mustang GT, and even after a full brake job, those brakes won't hold a candle to these. These things are excellent. The steering as well. It is an electric assisted unit, I believe, but even though it still has great road feel, you can tell exactly where the front wheels are. It's not leaving you guessing what's going on up at the front end. So, just a very well-tuned car. And that's kind of what made me choose the phrase doing a lot with a little to describe this car. It's such a tiny little package. It's not a big car at all. It doesn't have a demanding road presence. It doesn't feel like you're piloting the USS Lexington down the highway or anything like that. But at the same time, you've got plenty of room on the inside. I wouldn't hesitate to drive cross country in this thing at all. I mean, it's great. Extremely comfortable seating. Great driving dynamics whenever you want to be a little bit of a hooligan. So it's a great overall package. So like I said a few minutes ago, if you're looking for something that's not huge, but extremely practical, very efficient, fun to drive, do yourself a favor and drive an X1. You will not be disappointed. I know this car gets played off as, oh, that's just a little bit of a kind of a cheap car. Nobody wants an X1 or something like that. But it's not. It still feels like a BMW. I would drive this and feel good knowing that I'd purchased a quality automobile. And I think for value for the money, you really can't beat it, especially on the used car market. These things are great. So anyways, guys, I really hope you all have enjoyed this review. If there's any questions or comments on the car, feel free to drop those below, and I'll do my best to get those answered as soon as I can. But anyways, again, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and we will catch you next time.